music going to be as they come to the checkered flag? What a race this has been.
A small snowmobile racing team from Beausejour, Manitoba, is making itself known internationally. The drivers from Team TAC have placed and won in championships in Canada and the United States. They've endured life-threatening crashes, freezing conditions, and tremendous risks, all for the love of the sport. Currently, Team TAC has 3 racers: Jaryd Sachvie, Quinn Wojcik, and Sam Gloor.
The speed, the adrenaline you get when you're at the start line and wanting to get that whole shot, that's probably definitely the most exciting part about racing, is lining up with a bunch of other guys and trying to get to that corner first.
That's Sam Gloor. Sam races in the Pro F 500 class. If he gets a different type of sled or engine, he'll move to a different racing class. Sam's friend Jaryd introduced him to Team TAC's coach, Wayne Tremblay. Sam was a rookie. He'd been racing for a year, but he was still learning. After an interview with Wayne on a pond in 2017, it was a done deal. Sam would be part of Team TAC, and he'd grow with them. Sam hit the icy tracks with his team and picked up tips from the others.
Since I haven't been racing as long as the other guys, it's awesome when they're giving me pointers on how to improve myself.
There's a racetrack in Beausejour that hosts the Canadian Power Toboggan Championships. Over 100 racers from across North America come to the half-mile ice oval track for the competition. Sam, with Team TAC, has raced this track. It gets intense. Up to 18 racers can compete at the same time. Some racers surpass 170 kilometers per hour to reach the finish line. Sam knows he has the support of his team when racing, and his family is there too. The 29-year-old's wife, father, and mother come to watch his races. Sam met his wife Cynthia at the racetrack in 2015. They've been together pretty much ever since.
My wife Cynthia, she loves coming to watch her races too, but same as my mom, she's nervous, but she still enjoys it and she helps the team out as much as she can.
Quinn Wojcik's dad Dave is always at his races, but not in the stands. Dave's right by the track as part of Team TAC's pit crew. The father-son duo joined Team TAC a little after Sam did. Quinn races in the Pro Light class.
The Pro Light's more like an airplane, but without a seat, and you're not strapped in or anything. So you're just sitting out in the open, and if you don't hang on hard enough, you'll fall off, kind of thing. So it's kind of tough that way.
Quinn can speed from 100 to 160 kilometers per hour in a Pro Light race.
It's definitely a different feeling when you're out there. All you could hear is the sled. If somebody's close to you, you could hear them too, so it kind of gets your adrenaline pumping a little bit.
Quinn's mom won't watch his races live if he's in the front of the pack. She's too nervous, even though he began racing at 15. Quinn grew up a mile and a half away from the racetrack in Beausejour. He went to his first races when he was 7 or 8 years old. He started tinkering with engines at 10.
It all comes back to going to the racetrack as a kid. I always liked going to the races and I liked watching them, so I always wanted to work on them.
Quinn's parents bought him his first sled at 15 years old. That year, he traveled with his dad to 2 races in the United States. Now, the duo compete on the racing circuit together.
I won Eagle River World Championship for Sportsman 600 pretty proud of that one. I went off the track in the first corner and I was like dead last. I was like, oh man, I messed this up. And then I just kept picking away and ended up in the lead. And then I ended up winning that race.
Quinn and his dad would drive to competitions with Jaryd and Wayne from Team TAC, even when Quinn and Jaryd were competitors. Quinn joined the squad when Jaryd's work forced him to spend more time in northern Manitoba, away from the sledding tracks.
Wayne asked me, because he liked the way I drive, because I always raced against them. So he liked the way I drive. I always wanted to be on a faster sled, so it was pretty easy to make that transition.
Wayne's got the toys and the experience. Team TAC's coach has been into power sports since the early 70s. He's a mechanic. He and his brother built a snowmobile when he was 14, building sleds, wrenching. Wayne loves this kind of thing. Wayne owned TAC Power Sports in Oak Bluff, Manitoba. TAC Power Sports sold, you guessed it, snowmobiles.
I watch films on YouTube. I watch all the races and I see what other drivers are doing, but I get to see what my sled and my driver's doing. And every year I try to make that better.
Team TAC started when a 14-year-old kid came to Wayne asking for help with his sled. Wayne obliged, and the kid ended up being the first member of Team TAC. He retired in 2015, and Jaryd came on board. Jaryd referred Sam to the team. Sam joined, and a little while later, so did Quinn. Wayne's fast sleds appeal to the racers. Wayne takes a lot of pride in the sport and cares for his team.
My wife asked me, like, well, why do you do this? And I says, well, if it wasn't for the boys, I wouldn't do it. You know, I don't have somebody that can race, I don't have family that can race for me, so I don't consider them they're my sons, but I mean, I care for them like that.
Wayne looks for certain qualities in his racers. They're family men, they're good listeners, they're easygoing. There's not much drama on Team TAC.
If you just come to think about it, you got three wonderful, very responsible, very calm, very talented drivers, and all come from the same town. So I told Dave one day, is it the water or is it the people?
Wayne and his drivers travel together to snowmobile races called ice oval races. They're called ice oval races because of the racetrack's characteristics. Team TAC stores their sleds in a trailer when they drive down from Beausejour for a competition. Team TAC's drivers may be at the same competitions, but they aren't in the same races and they don't use the same sleds. The Pro F500 and Pro Light events have different engines and different expectations, but the love of the sport is all the same, and so is the need for safety.
The first thing I ask the boys when they come off, how's the sled handling? Having a sled that handles very well is a safe sled. And that's, again, all successful teams are safe teams. It's a dangerous sport. Ask Sammy one day, you'll find out.
Up next, Sam discusses the racing accident that almost took his life. The members of Team TAC love the speed and adrenaline that comes with snowmobile racing. But love of the sport doesn't make them invincible. One race in December 2019 will be tattooed on Sam's mind for the rest of his life.
The final on a Saturday, I was running first. Another guy racing, he was racing really close behind me. He was just waiting for me to lose my line, and it didn't happen. And he just got a little too close to me. He tapped my rear end, sent me sideways, and then I was laying in the middle of the track, and after I got tossed off the sled, I kind of got turned around on where I was, so I didn't get up right away, and then the last sled in the pack came around the corner and couldn't stop in time, and he hit me.
The crash happened about 40 meters in front of Sam's wife, Cynthia Peltier.
I was standing in that corner of the accident, and watching, you don't really think that's gonna happen. Like, you always think when you're going, someone's gonna get hurt, and every time they go on the track, you're thinking, he's not gonna get hurt, but it's a possibility. And one of the worst case scenarios happened right in front of us. It was surreal and terrifying, but we heard him screaming, so he was okay. At least he wasn't unconscious, that's all I thought. As long as he's making noise, I was okay.
As Sam lay on the ground, an acquaintance at the track offered to watch Cynthia and Sam's son. Cynthia agreed and ran to the ice to be with her husband. She rode in the ambulance with Sam and stood by him in the hospital.
I was mostly just trying to explain to doctors and nurses what had actually happened, because when you tell them he fell off a snowmobile and another snowmobile hit him, they think of trail riding or something a little bit slower than what happened. I actually had to show them the video probably 40 times for them to see what actually happened, and then they kind of got it, that it was more than just a fall and then a little crack.
Sam spent 11 days in the hospital. He broke his femur, his tibia, and his fibula. Sam ended up with a titanium rod in his femur from hip to knee, and doctors had to insert about 8 pins in his knee. He was on crutches when he was sent home.
For the first 3 months, I was basically just stuck on the couch the whole time. I couldn't do much, couldn't shower by myself.
Cynthia was there to help him.
I was used to being able to just be busy all the time, but getting me through that was Cynthia. She was there to help me out through all of it. Whatever I needed, she was there. And then my son Deckard too, at least I got lots of time hanging out with him. He always cheered me up.
At the same time that Sam was recovering, the driver who hit him began a GoFundMe page. The driver raised money for Sam and his family. He and Sam are on speaking terms. Sam said he's forgiven him.
Everyone has those moments in racing where you wish you didn't do something he did, and he knows he made a mistake and apologized for it.
The GoFundMe page was just one instance of the racing community showing support for Sam. Everyone from close family and friends to people Sam had never spoken with were sending their well wishes.
Actually, that's something else that actually helped out with me being in the hospital and my recovery, was how much the racing community sent me messages and gifts, get well gifts and stuff. Like, that was awesome to see.
The racing community rallied together for Sam, but it didn't nullify the risk of going back to the sport post-recovery.
I was hoping that the doctor would tell him no to going back to racing, which he technically did. But Sam would make a joke to the surgeon who fixed his leg. I guess this means that my season is over, and the surgeon just kind of looked at him like, that's not funny. I've just fixed your leg. You're not going back. And then the physiotherapist was like, so when are you gonna go back racing? She was very optimistic, so I kind of just said, if you need to go back to prove to yourself you can still do it, then you can. But if you don't, then no one's gonna blame you for not going back.
Sam's crash almost took his coach Wayne out of racing too. Wayne was sitting beside Cynthia when the accident happened.
I don't want to see that again. I considered closing the team down after that. Me and Jaryd didn't race the following day in respect for Sammy. We just didn't race.
Ultimately, Wayne decided to continue coaching. He visited Sam in the hospital and called him often during the early phases of recovery. Sam's crash still weighs heavily on him. Quinn joined Team TAC soon after. What happened to Sam could happen to Quinn. This is something Quinn's dad Dave recognizes. Dave worries about Quinn when he races.
Every time he's on the track, from the time I take the ski skins off, my heart's pounding till he's through the corner.
Quinn has crashed before, but he's walked away from every one of them. His first accident happened in Devils Lake, Wisconsin, when he was 15.
Getting back on the sled after that first crash, it took you a while to get used to the sled again, so you're kind of scared of it at first, and then you just get used to it again, and then the sled gets better. I just kind of told myself, It's just a sled. You could kind of handle it and go fast.
And handle it, Quinn did. Up next, he and the other members of Team TAC talk about their plans for their futures in snowmobile racing. A group of drivers from Wojcik, Manitoba make up the snowmobile racing crew Team TAC. One of its members, Sam Gloor, got in an accident while racing that left him with a broken femur, tibia, and fibula, benching him for the remainder of the 2019 season. In general, the risk of the sport is worth it for Team TAC's drivers. Sam has mostly recovered from his injuries. He plans to hop on his sled and go for the gold again next season. The thrill of racing keeps him coming back.
It's like that feeling of being on the start line again. It's just the adrenaline you get being on that start line and being the first one to that corner. And winning a race too, it's one of the best feelings in the world.
Sam has been stretching, running, and lifting weights to prepare for his return to the sport.
I'm obviously very excited to be back at the track and racing again. And we're going to find out physically how it's going to feel, but I'm hoping that everything is going to be all right. I mean, back of my head, I'm still always thinking, like, should I keep doing this? But the adrenaline is just addictive, and I'm love my family for respecting my decisions on still racing. So.
Cynthia said she worries about Sam, but she knows he loves racing.
With him loving racing so much, you kind of have to go with that, because saying you can't do that, that's dangerous, isn't really being supportive. So trying to support that love in that sport as much as you can is important.
Quinn also plans on staying with Team TAC in the next season. A short-term goal of his is to compete in the Pro Champ 440 class. He's got a long-term vision, too.
Long-term goals was to hopefully win a world championship or two in Eagle River in the Pro Champ 440 class.
Quinn works as a small engine mechanic. He tinkers with snowmobiles in the winter and quads and razors in the summer. His job allows him to take time off for competitions, and it's taught him more about the sleds he loves to ride. Quinn said he's learned a lot throughout his racing career. He has tips for beginners.
Underrated skills, I guess, would be staying calm, because then if you get worked up right away, you'll make mistakes and then it'll get worse and kind of make you slower. Don't take it too seriously, still have fun with it, and then you'll probably do a lot better because you're not trying so hard and it's a little more easier and that way.
Sam also says you shouldn't take racing too seriously.
Have fun, definitely have fun.
But even so, racers need to be smart on the track, which includes being aware of your surroundings.
Not weaving in and out of other sleds, like changing your line really often, just stick to your line.
Wayne plans on coaching Team TAC again in the following season. He said he thinks his team will be forced in the Pro Champ category in the future. The near future is uncertain for the racing community as the COVID-19 pandemic continues.
What's happening in the States doesn't look very promising for racing for Canadians. A good majority of our races are in Minnesota, and their numbers are still high.
Some races are in Ontario. Wayne said he's looking into those and other Canadian competitions. But travel is tricky right now, and most events Team TAC participates in are in the States.
We're really kind of hoping that there might be some other races in Canada to absorb that. Ontario is a little bit far for us to go.
The Canadian Power Toboggan Championships in Wojcik are scheduled for the 2020-2021 season. The season opener is planned for December, and the finals are set to run the following March. These plans may change with the pandemic. Even with the uncertainty, injuries, and constant risks that comes with snowmobile racing, Wayne seems happy. He's got talented, good-natured drivers and a new season to look forward to.
My dream goal is right now. I think we have one of the low-budget, most competitive team with the two classes we run. We've been at it for many, many years, and it really helps to have good people and good drivers, but people are the most important thing.
The team will have to get used to Sam being back and having Quinn on full-time.
You just can't grab a driver and stick them on the sled and the first race you're going to win. It takes you 3 or 4 races to get the sled dialed in for that driver. So this year with Quinn, the sled's pretty well dialed in. We're just got to do some updates and that on it and make sure it's okay. And then Sammy, we got to convert the sled back to Sammy because Jaryd run it, so there's difference in size, so we got to get that back.
Wayne said he's excited to have Sam back on the team, but there's going to be a learning curve.
We're going to be back to square one with Sammy. It's going to take us one good weekend to get it back to where it's going to be good for him.
There's a lot of questions around what snowmobile racing will look like in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. But one thing's for certain, Team Tech will be ready with their sleds when the tracks open up.